Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Struggle Session. I'm Leslie III.
I'm Jack Allison.
I'm Shannon Strucci.
And today we're doing a very special episode because people have been saying this for a few months now that 2020 is going to be the year of dudes rock. And Struggle Session, you know, I think we were kind of founded on that ethos. Maybe we got a little bit away from it, but it's time for us to get together and realize just how much dudes rock. And we're doing that today with a very dudes rock movie. It's a movie for dudes who like movies, I would say. I think it's fair assessment. And that is Roadhouse, the Patrick Swayze movie that I did not know until today was actually a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie too. And we have a very special guest joining us to talk about it today because we've had him on the show several times, and we keep mentioning the fact that he did this completely ridiculous thing, which is write an essay a day about Roadhouse for a year, and he completed that project. It's called Sweeping Up the Eyeballs. You can check it out on his Patreon at patreon.com/Sean T. Collins. We'll have a link in the show notes. But thank you so much for joining us again, Sean.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Love to talk about Roadhouse, obviously.
Well, you are, I would say, maybe the preeminent Roadhouse expert. You know, maybe when it comes just to body of work, you must be, right?
Yeah.
I think from sheer volume alone, yeah.
And so, Sean, I usually try to introduce the movie, but lay out the groundwork. But clearly, you have a better grasp of this. Why don't you tell our audience what is Roadhouse?
Well, the way that I usually put it is something like this. Roadhouse is the story of one bouncer's war against the guy who is opening the first JCPenney in the area. and over half a dozen men will die for this.
Yeah, I was saying before the show, I thought I had seen this movie. They played this nonstop on TBS from the age when I was 8 to 15, but I realized I never had actually sat down and watched the whole thing myself, and I had no clue what I was getting into. I thought it was just about a guy cleaning up a bar, and the finale would be he finally gets the bullies run out of town or something like that. I guess it's kind of like that, but actually he just all the bullies get killed for the most part.
Yes.
This movie, I hadn't seen this for many years, and it's a truly odd world. Yeah, it's really just it actually, I was saying this before that we were recording, it really reminds me of John Wick, with there being a hidden underground world of bouncers, and then also just like wanton death for the final 30 minutes of it is the resolution.
Yeah, the thing about, they call him a cooler because he's not a bouncer, he's a cooler. He's in charge of all the bouncers, and he's not even the best one, the most world-renowned one. That's his mentor. 'Cause actually, the world's most renowned cooler. Is this a thing in real life?
Not, I doubt very much that I haven't done super deep research into the world of bouncers and coolers, but I mean, it's a film that takes place in a world where, people know these guys by name alone. And yeah, Patrick Swayze's character is in fact, yep. They gasp. His reputation precedes him.
Over and over again.
Yep.
Through several scenes.
And he's the second most famous bouncer in America, which is great. That's such a nice touch for the movie. His mentor, Wade Garrett, is technically the best.
And Shannon, this was your first time watching it, right?
Yes. I had never seen it in full before. I had seen, Red Letter Media did a compilation of all the face punches in it 8 years ago, and I think I'd seen that a couple times in their review, and I was familiar with it. But this is my first time watching the whole thing, and I'm mad at myself that I had not watched it before.
Yeah, it is one of these things, actually, where, I had watched it so long ago, and I kind of just remembered it as a corny B movie, and I'm actually, there is a lot more here. It is this world is like, I don't know, like it feels like consistent unto itself. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like this movie feels like it like takes itself seriously in a way I really appreciate about like just a truly like strange version of a thing that does exist in real life. It's really weird.
Right. No, I think one of the things, you know, as I was saying before we got on the air, it's a movie that a lot of people have sort of absorbed through osmosis from the constant TBS airings, which my friends who first showed me this movie, a lot of them had never seen it actually uncensored, the rated R version. They only saw it, you know, on the TV version.
Oh, you have to. There's so much nudity in this. I don't know
also
how you
good
can
swearing.
Great swearing.
Lots of swearing,
Great swearing.
too.
Yeah. And, you know, but the thing about it is that I think everyone involved, from the cast to the crew, is really committed to the bit. And I'm a big fan of Patrick Swayze. I like his work. I think he's great in this. I think Sam Elliott's great as his mentor. Kelly Lynch is really good. Again, very committed. But one of the things that I learned when I started doing the Daily Roadhouse project was like the pedigree of the people involved in making this film is really nuts. Like the cinematographer is Dean Cundy, who worked with John Carpenter from The Fog. He did The Thing. He did Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China, and then he went on to do Who Framed Roger Rabbit and the Back to the Future series.
Wow.
Yeah. The editors, because it's really... The editing really kind of struck me because it's so key to these fight scenes. There's two guys, what are their names? John F. Link and Frank, I'm not going to get the name right, Uriost, I think. And separately or together, they worked on Die Hard, Predator, Commando, all of the big Verhoeven movies, RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct. They did Tombstone, Lethal Weapon. Joel Silver was the producer, who's the producer of the Matrix series and the Lethal Weapon series. The music supervisor is Jimmy Iovine, who founded Interscope and is now the Beats billionaire.
And the score by Michael Kamen.
Michael Kamen, which really kind of kicks ass, particularly towards the end.
Oh yeah, it's so good. It's almost like it feels like almost like Star Wars. Like the fight scene music. But he's done a ton of stuff. He did Brazil, all Lethal Weapons, Die Hard. He done it all. It's just, you know, there's so much about this movie I love that actually, Sean, I have to say, it took my opinion of you as a writer down a little bit, because I thought when you announced that you were doing an essay a day about Roadhouse, this was like, oh man, that guy's a hell of a writer if he can turn some cheap ass, you know, B movie about some
like,
people hanging out in a bar.
Is good. So sorry, Sean.
It's actually really good, and there is something that you could write 300 essays about. Like every scene has so much going on in it. So I have to say, kind of an easy lift. Sean.
It really wasn't that bad. You know, the thing that I kind of decided early on, I remember when the writer Grant Morrison took over the Batman comic, he said in interviews that he was going to treat everything that had happened throughout the whole publication history of Batman as something that actually happened to Batman. You know, he kind of made everything intentional. So all like the corny sci-fi stories where he went to another planet and he met the Batman of that planet and so on. You know, he came up with explanations for this. A lot of it had to do with like, he was dosed with psychedelics without knowing it and all kinds of things. But he was like, what would a man who's been through all of these things, you know, who sometimes dealt with the Joker when the Joker is just a prankster and other times when he's a serial killer, who's been to other planets for real and hallucinated that he's been to other planets, all this stuff. What kind of person would result from that? And I liked that so much, the way he's like, I'm going to take everything at face value. I'm going to take it at its word and work from there. And that's more or less what I did when I wrote about Roadhouse. Like, some things are kind of unavoidable. Some line readings are so goofy, or some acting is so bad by the various stuntmen who fill out the cast that, you know, you kind of it is sort of so bad it's good in some ways. But I just kind of took it at face value, and I was like, okay, this is a real movie. All these things are really happening to these characters. Like, it was so much more interesting to write about it that way than to be like, haha, look at this, look how stupid this is, look how silly this is.
Right.
You know?
And so let's try to explain, for if you haven't seen Roadhouse, what the plot of this movie is. So Patrick Swayze, the world's second best cooler, which is I just looked it up. It is it is what you call the head of the bodyguards. I don't know if Roadhouse started it or not. I guess the world will never know.
I think probably in real life there's like the bouncer manager or whatever is called the cooler, but I doubt that they have like an underground world where they all know who the best cooler is and trains people on how to fight and stuff.
I don't think they're roving from bar to bar like masterless samurai.
These are probably guys making like minimum wage who actually don't really give a shit too much.
Yeah, and so Patrick Swayze, he's scouted by this bar guy in what state is it in? Did he say
Missouri?
Yep. He says you're the second best, and I have to have you at my bar because my bar is shitty and my patrons keep killing one another.
Which is just so funny to begin with. Like it's funny that there's just like, I don't know, that you even keep the bar open. You know what I mean? That what you have to do here is like you have to get the world's best bouncer because people just keep on killing each other.
The amount of the furniture budget for this place, given how many tables and chairs get smashed, like it would put them out of business instantly. They're just having to replace the entire dining area every day.
Yeah, the margin of owning a bar in this town must be fucking ridiculous. Because if it's not your patrons destroying it, it's the rich asshole who runs the town destroying it. The villain of this movie, his name is Brad Wesley, very rich guy name, and ultimately the film, I think, is appealing, to us as socialists, because ultimately the film is about how like this rich guy just keeps stealing all his wealth from everyone else, and the only thing to do to stop him is to if everyone in the town gets together and shoots him to death.
All the small business owners specifically.
Yes.
The small business owners brutally murder him.
One problematic aspect, this film is pro small business tyrant.
It's too bad.
Yeah, there's really no way around that. I'm sorry.
So Dalton, he goes to this town, this new bar. He meets his friend who's blind blues man. I really like that character. And I like seeing you get to see the band play like 4 or 5 times throughout the film. And it's just fun to watch like a musical performance on screen. We just did an episode on Purple Rain, and this gave me kind of similar vibes early on, because I was like, this movie is just about your local music scene and like what's it like going out to clubs. Our like what is it called, the Double Deuce? Our Double Deuce in Baton Rouge was a place called the Texas Club, which was just, it was like the shittiest club that like older white people would go to, and like the bikers and stuff would go to. But it was really big. But it was like really big. Like Baton Rouge is not a big town, so like all the mid-level indie bands would play there too. Like, so it would be like Coheed and Cambria like one night, and then the next night it'll be like Achy Breaky Heart tribute night or whatever.
I should mention here that our apartment building shares a parking lot with one of the, I want to say, 6 Irish pubs within a 1-block radius of where we live. And it's called McCarthy's. And pretty much every night there's like a screaming fight in the parking lot that, occasionally it comes to blows, occasionally it doesn't.
Maybe we need better coolers.
Yes.
Maybe what this film shows us is like an aspiration of what if we treated coolers the way they should be treated, just like the heroes that they are.
He's pulling down mid-6 figures. I did the math.
Oh, yeah.
On the insanely exorbitant price quote he gives the owner of the bar to work at the bar, and it's like, he's doing all right for himself.
Yeah, we found out he drives a BMW. Secretly they hides, but then he just buys a crappy car for cash because all the patrons will fuck up his shit if he takes it to the bar.
That's called being prepared. Like, that's why he's the world's second best cooler. That's right. It's like putting in the work.
So I kind of want to take a brief note here. is Dalton actually good at this? Because we see the kind of almost like a montage of him cleaning up the place and training the trainees, and kicking out the guy who's skimming off the top, or the guy or the waitress who's dealing drugs. But I have to say, there's probably more violence that happens after he gets there than before.
It's a Batman
Right.
situation.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? It becomes, who brings all these people to this place?
He gets drawn into this life or death struggle with the JCPenney guy, and after that, it's. I guess the big difference is now the violence is focused in this conflict between him and the rich guy, who I should mention is played by Ben Gazzara, who is Jackie Treehorn in The Big Lebowski, and was a member of John Cassavetes' repertory company, and fucking originated a role in Cat in a Hot Tin Roof, directed by Tennessee Williams, and now he's in Roadhouse. Which I actually, that's like so good to me. But yeah, it gets a little more intense and focused instead of like the first night he comes to the bar. There is an epic fight scene that looks like it was from like a Flemish painting of hell. Like it's so out of control, and Terry
Is this
Funk.
the one where the guy has the knife on his boot?
That's a different one.
Later
Okay,
on.
okay,
Yes.
later. That's a later one.
This is the one where they get mad at the band.
Oh,
Yep.
right. Okay, sure.
Yep, and Terry Funk launches someone through a table. He's in this movie, wrestler Terry Funk, which is
Terry
also
Funk,
cool.
former NWA champion.
Yep.
I really like seeing wrestlers just show up in as the heavies in movies, and we need to do more of it. I think Kevin Nash is the only wrestler of this generation who successfully is doing that stuff right now.
The amazing thing also about Terry Funk, not to get off on a sidetrack, but I looked it up, and I think just a week before the movie came out was the end of the Ric Flair, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat trilogy of matches. They're like Stone Classics, best of all time type things. And Terry Funk gets really involved in the end, and because it then becomes a Ric Flair Terry Funk program. So the week before this movie came out, he beat the shit out of Ric Flair after Ric Flair finally triumphed over Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And it's that's pretty good synergy, I have to say.
Yes. We get a lot of action scenes in this movie, a lot. And I was shocked by how good they were. Patrick
they're good.
Swayze is so good. The shit he's doing is like Muay Thai shit, really in close elbows and knees and these really precise, quick strikes. And I just love the way he moves and fights in this movie. And I'm actually upset that he didn't do a lot more action stuff after this, because goddamn, he's almost as good as a Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to his two things: his dance training, which I think is really in evidence in a lot of parts in this movie. Not just the fight scenes, but he does Tai Chi at one point, and also just he was doing as many of his own stunts as they would let him do, and for example, the final, it's not the final fight, but he has a huge fight towards the end of the movie against this guy Jimmy, played by Marshall Teague, who is the right-hand man of the rich guy Brad Wesley, played by Ben Gazzara. And after their first night filming, they realized they had to go much easier on each other, because they were literally beating the shit out of each other to make it look real. And they kind of stepped aside and saw their bruises and were like, okay, if we want to continue filming this movie after this is over, we have to go a little easier on ourselves. So he was, again, fully committed physically, and I think it really comes through.
Yeah, he's honestly, I don't really feel like I fully appreciated Patrick Swayze. I guess until this rewatch. I mean, I'd seen this before, but I kind of just wrote off Patrick Swayze. But he's so compelling in this, and yeah, like Leslie said, really impressive physically in this movie. Really, really impressive fighting in the movie.
Yeah. And I think, again, that's another reason why it goes down smooth. We've been saying, it's not, I mean, there are things about it that are incredibly stupid. It's so many people get punched in the face which is kind of a fundamentally stupid thing to do. But, you know, and it's silly and, you know, the famous bouncer and the JCPenney and the photomat and all this kind of stuff. But, within that context, it's not like a Mystery Science Theater type movie where it's like a chore to get through even with people wisecracking at it. Like it's engaging.
This is like how you make a big bombastic movie about bouncers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is not like, it's not like it's like done badly. Like, it's not, you know, this is like a really well executed, like 3-act story, you know, that like has a very clear villain and has compelling characters and everything like that. It's just really weird to do that to the world of bouncers. You know what I mean? It's just like that. It's like this one really strange element in like what is otherwise like, this could be, you know, like if you take all the same cast and like even a lot of the same scenes, it could just be like a revenge movie or something like that.
Or like a Jack
they
Reacher.
Decided to place it in this like truly strange setting, and I like love it. Like what they actually do is like really effectively and well apply like movie storytelling to bouncers, and this is, you know, a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like just as basic a story as that there's a new sheriff in town. You know?
Right, yeah. This is like it's like a Walker Texas Ranger or something like that. He comes to town, like helps out with the issue, and really commits himself to it, you know, changes people, and then leaves town.
It's, I said before we were recording, I've been playing Yakuza 0. And you walk through the streets and you just get attacked by like roving gangs of men, and you go and you help people with their problems, and it's all very, very funny and over the top and like deliberately over the top.
Yeah.
And I think Roadhouse isn't like winking self-aware, but it knows when it's being funny, I think. Especially that bartender character. There's stuff he does later on with a gun that just doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like when he's pulling it, he just does, but there's so many bizarre character choices and really, really strange over the top moments that are just edited perfectly for comedic effect. I never felt like it, like there are parts of it that were really, really dumb, but like a lot of movies that I like are dumb. They don't have to be like super subtle or super intelligent. It's very well made. And when I was reading that it was like critically panned and that it didn't do that well in theaters, but it did better on home video, I was like, I legitimately don't understand that, because I thought it was really entertaining and really fun.
I think it's just such a weird premise. Like it's
super weird.
It's a hard pill to swallow, and if you just are not willing to do it, then it's like so easy to point at everything that's so ridiculous. But really, what this movie is, honestly, when you said the new sheriff comes down, like this is like a Western. This is them trying to do a Western just in like 1980s America. You know what I mean? This is like, and you know, the villain is JCPenney coming to town, and it kind of has the resolution that like a Western has. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it really is like, you know, the kind of that storytelling as applied to like, I guess, like kind of that moment in time a little bit.
It's a new sheriff in town, except he's not a sheriff and he's not a soldier. And like, how many action movies can you name where that isn't the protagonist, either a cop or a troop, and or at least a vet? Like this is one of the few that like does not have that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially
Now, of course, it is weird that a bouncer takes this on, but but I still do appreciate that.
And when you look at the movies that, let's say, that Joel Silver produced on either side of this, you're right, it's all soldiers and cops. It's Die Hard, the Die Hard series, the Lethal Weapon series, the Predator series. So this is kind of a break from what was the you know, the sort of standard mold at that time.
And you know, you mentioned Die Hard and Predator. Something I noticed about them, even though they do feature a cop and this, you know, CIA paramilitary squad, like in Die Hard, he makes a point of like he doesn't try to shoot the terrorists first. Like he wants to he tries to arrest them. In Predator, the first scene where they shoot up that village of like Viet Cong, they get pissed off because they were tricked by the CIA to do this, and they say like, "Hey, we don't go around just, you know, murdering people. We're a rescue operation." And in this film, Patrick Swayze has PTSD because he had to kill a guy in self-defense. Now, I think those three things kind of show like like Captain America or Iron Man, like will murder like 30, 40 people every film and feel nothing, you know, like that we've kind of, I think we've really, when it comes to action movies, have gotten completely away from the idea that human life has meaning, at least for the first two acts. At least for the first two acts, human life is supposed to have meaning in these films.
Yeah, that's interesting. That, you know, the Marvel characters have their foibles or whatever, but you know, the idea that like they feel bad about the violence that they wreak upon the world, that really is kind of gone from the current action model for sure. Yeah.
Honestly, I think a lot of that is just because, like, you know, like it's spectacle creep is what it is. It's like they want movies to feel as big and bigger than TV, and so spectacle creep has to happen. And like the only way they can think of doing that is like, you know, more bigger special effects. And the only bigger special effects you can do are like, you know, 20 9/11s in a movie or whatever, and to actually make characters like reckon with the like many 9/11s they've caused would be to like halt Avengers, you know what I mean? All the Avengers would just like be in therapy and shit.
It's not sustainable.
It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense for them to actually have regard for human life.
I think the value of human life is a big attempted theme in this movie, or like a theme with his girlfriend just being completely horrified when he kills the guy, even though it was in self-defense. And then the end of the movie is just like the most brutal murder ever. So it's very interesting, like the way that she's treated, because she's sympathetic, but I think she's seen as like maybe a little bit naive. Although he ends up with her at the end anyway, so it works out, even though she's like watched these people. She's so upset over the one guy getting killed, and she watched these people shoot Jackie Treehorn in the chest. And I guess unfazed by it.
An army of old coots shows up with shotguns at the climax of this film and murders the bad guy because finally, after killing all of his henchmen one by one, a lot of it off screen for some unknown reason, you know, Dalton has Brad Wesley at his mercy, and he has his hand pulled back to do this throat ripping maneuver that first they were talking about as like this traumatic part of his past, and then we saw him actually do it to a guy. But now he hesitates because that's what you do when you have like the big bad guy. You can't, for some reason in movies, you can't actually kill the person responsible for all the bad stuff. You can only kill their like hapless minions. It's like the Star Wars model where like, we'll kill all these stormtroopers, but we got to be careful around Kylo Ren or Darth Vader.
I think because the last guy gets to beg for mercy, and it would be inhumane to do it. Without, you know, pulling back. And actually, Shannon, I kind of disagree. I think the movie does say that Doc, I love that they call her Doc through this movie. I love her that everybody calls her Doc. She is, I think the film thinks that she's right, because when she's horrified at Dalton, he's also kind of horrified at himself. And then when he does have the chance to do another throat rip, which by the way is fucking awesome. It's so awesome. When he does like decide not to, and instead the community comes out and says, all right, we've had enough of this dude, and we're going to blow him away because we don't want to have to put all of this on your conscience, still, Dalton. It's time for us to share the pain and share the grief in blowing this guy away.
I think, like, in a lot of Disney movies, the main villain ends up getting killed by like nature. Or like Ratigan gets eaten by the cat, or like this or that happens. And that happens in this movie, but it's like you said, old coots. That's like nature. That's the film taking away the responsibility from Patrick Swayze while still giving the audience a brutal death.
This is not exactly what happens in here, because people do show up and kill him. But like, I really do love the Disney thing, and you know, the kind of movie thing of like when a bad guy gets punished by God and dies. I especially love it in comedies. They don't do it as much in comedies anymore, but I used to love it when like the bad guy in a comedy would like die and everybody thinks that's funny and shit. Like, I like that in 80s comedies.
Sean, you know, we've kind of gone through, you know, the main plot, but what are the other things we're missing about this film that made it so special for you?
A few things. You know, we touched on it a little bit with the cast and how interesting the cast is, you know, with Sam Elliott, Ben Gazzara, ranging to Terry Funk, you know, the famous hardcore legend of wrestling. The bartender who gets fired from skimming the till is John Doe from the punk band X, which is really interesting too. Yeah. Yep. Keith David shows up.
Yeah,
very briefly.
Yeah, in the background.
Right. The Keith David, the god from fucking The Thing and They Live, has a tiny role where he only says whiskey's running low. That's the extent of his role. Now, apparently it was written bigger and just wound up on the cutting room floor, because otherwise the movie, which runs 2.5 hours, would have been ridiculously unwieldy at that point. Which is too bad. But I've since read interviews with him where it's like, because he received billing in the opening credits or whatever, like he gets a lot of money from that movie, even though he's barely in it. So that's a happy ending, and I appreciate that. I think it's a really quotable film too.
Yes.
And maybe I think that, along with everyone getting punched in the head and how, the impression that leaves, it's the quotes like "pain don't hurt," ranging to "I used to fuck guys like you in prison." People remember the shit that people say in this movie.
Yeah, the type of place you sweep up the eyeballs
after closing. Like there's one, he asks him he asks one of the old coots a question, and the answer is obvious. So the coot responds, "Does a hobby horse have a wooden dick?"
Yeah,
which is supposed to be does the bear shit in the woods? Is the Pope Catholic? But the thing is, hobby horses do not have wooden dicks. No, they don't. So it doesn't make sense.
One thing that doesn't hold up for me, and I'm sure it's probably very controversial in the Roadhouse community, that's Patricia Arquette's on-stage performance of that song. She does not look like she has ever seen a singer before. It's too over the top for a bar band. One thing this film does really get is what a bar band is and sounds like in the songs that they play. But yeah, Patricia Arquette does not do it for me.
You mean the waitress when she does her little performance of Knock on Wood?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel very warmly disposed to that character, who's Carrie Ann, who's played by Kathleen Wilhoit. Because
it's not Patricia Arquette?
It's not. No.
Oh, she looks a lot like her, though.
She's in a couple of, she's in one of those raunchy Private School. Is that a movie? I think she's in that. I don't know what else she's been in.
Yes.
But she has a moment, and actually this brings me to something that I really should talk about. She has a moment where she looks at Swayze's character as he gets up out of bed in the nude, and the look of dumbstruck awe and pure lust on her face, it's amazing. I love that performance. I think it's super hot because it's something you don't really get to see in movies a whole lot. Just this female gaze, and he's not looking at her, so this is completely private to her. This is just her personal response to seeing this fucking Greek god get out of bed in the nude. And, and people look at Patrick Swayze with awe constantly in this film, men and women, to the point where, it's easy to kind of crack jokes about are these guys into him? There's one point where, Ben Gazzara's character watches him have sex with the doc, who is his own ex-wife. And it's it's hard to tell who he's actually looking at, because his demeanor is so weird. And you get these the owner of the bar, who's played by Kevin Tighe, who played John Locke's dad on Lost. He's constantly almost leering at Dalton, and there's the catchphrase that keeps coming up, "I thought you'd be bigger," and the way he delivers it, it's like he's talking about his dick. He's like, "I thought you'd be bigger." And it's a film where Patrick Swayze's intense beauty is a major driver of, if not the action, then just sort of the emotional thrust of each scene. It's which is really interesting. And it makes sense because it was after Ghost. No, I'm sorry, it was after Dirty Dancing. It was before Ghost. It was after Dirty Dancing, which established him as a major sex symbol. And it's just interesting how they sandwiched that into a completely different film.
That was something I thought about a lot watching it, just sort of the concept of the female gaze, or just a lot of fan service intended, I think, for female viewers. With him and with Sam Elliott. I'm used to Sam Elliott having a big mustache and being in a cowboy hat, and this, he's always got his hair done up, or he's doing this, or he's doing that, and it felt very much geared toward, which is so unusual to me for such a hyper-violent movie for that much attention to be paid towards like female viewers. Like there's like a really disgusting sex scene toward the beginning at the bar.
Right.
And then the sex scenes later on are played as much more romantic, which is kind of unusual for a movie like this. I thought it was cool. It was different at least. And I really like Sam Elliott, so I was happy to see him in a different kind of role from what I was used to as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's an action movie where Sam Elliott unbuttons his jeans, reveals that he's going in commando, and shows off a scar that also shows off his pubic hair. Like, it's... like... You don't get that in Die Hard as much as I like Die Hard.
Who the intended audience is for this, like who they were thinking was like the mass audience for this movie, and that's like part of like what makes it sort of like unique, and like that's part of like what you're kind of like, man, this like is like a big movie that I'm like, it doesn't, I can't really, it's like, it feels big and blockbustery, but then it's also so weird that it's like hard to get a handle on.
Yeah, if you watch the trailer for the movie, they almost show nothing from the third act, none of the action from the third act. It really tries to sell it as kind of like a drama about a bar as opposed to a full out, action movie with a, and they spend a lot of time showing Patrick Swayze with his shirt off and the kissing scenes and all that stuff. So and that's the film I always thought it was. I really thought it was like Dirty Dancing too, but I mean, there was like a giant monster truck in this that drove
monster truck. Oh my god! How did I not bring up the monster truck? Yeah, that was like very early on in the writing process for the Roadhouse thing that I did. Eventually I went pretty in straight chronological order, but when I was started, I kind of drew from all over the movie just to establish, okay, like here are all the characters. Here's some key scenes. Here's some key vibes that you get from this movie, just trying to establish it. And I just have a post where it's basically nothing more or less than me saying over and over again with screenshots. Roadhouse is a movie in which a Ford dealership gets run over by a monster truck. The whole fucking Ford dealership. Not just a random car. The monster truck blasts its way through the whole thing.
The thing about it was that's not just any monster's truck. That's literally they built that truck and made it into Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Which is, the world's most famous monster truck, of course. And apparently just that scene alone cost $500,000.
Again, I'm like, who is this movie for? Like, it has like sex scenes that feel feel very female gaze, but then also there's like a monster truck scene that is like for like what an 8-year-old boy would want to see. That's truly just what an 8-year-old wants to see. I loved it too, but don't get me wrong.
Yes. Yeah, I'm guessing they tried to split the difference between his like new fan base, that he got from Dirty Dancing and just like the basic action movie, template that virtually everybody involved in the film had a hand in, basically creating, really, when you think about the filmographies of these people. And you just wind up with this weird hybrid thing that feels like almost nothing else.
Truly bizarre. Yeah, what a weird movie.
Very weird, very strange, but I really, really enjoyed it. I'm really glad I got to finally sit down and watch it all the way through. I will be watching it the next time it's on TBS, guarantee.
Hell yeah, man. I never miss it. If it's on, I will watch it.
Yeah, I appreciated this a lot more than when I first watched it, which I did kind of watch it in the first time I watched it, I feel like I did watch it, wanting to watch it in an MST3K way. And watching it this time, I was like, this movie actually is solid and internally coherent. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that this movie really commits to its world. And that everybody is doing it for real. Yes, there's goofy acting, but there's not winky acting. And winky acting is so much worse than goofy acting.
That's such a good distinction. I'm going to steal that. Thank you.
I loved it. And I mentioned Red Letter Media. I became familiar with it because years ago they talked about seeing it at a movie marathon in a theater. And after I watched it, I was like, I would have loved to see this with a crowd of people.
Yeah, it does feel like if theaters ever exist again, I would go to a theater screening of it.
Missed the riff tracks guys. I should say I probably really kind of. Well, no, that's not true. I discovered the movie because my friend showed it to me. But I kind of really got into it when it was the very first riff tracks that Mike Nelson ever did. And they've since re-recorded it with Kevin Murphy and Bill Corbett. I want to say twice, maybe even 3 times, like with completely different jokes. And one of them was at one of their live events where you go to the theater and they riff it live, which sounds intense.
All right, folks, that was Struggle Session. Sean, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at the Sean T. Collins. You can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/the Sean T. Collins. And my website, where I try to link to everything that I write, is SeanTCollins.com. And right at the top, you'll find the Roadhouse Project, a link to it. So you just click there and you can read a whole year's worth of writing about Roadhouse.
So next year, Roadhouse 2?
Oh my God. You know, people are like, are you going to do this again? And I'm like, I don't know.
All right, folks. Have a good one. Peace.
Have a good one.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
The gypsy woman told my mother before I was born, you got a boy child coming, gonna be a son of a gun, gonna make pretty women jump and shout.